Hi everyone, welcome to Live with Janome. I'm Ann Hine, Embroidery Software Specialist for Janome America. And on this video, we're talking about graphics, and it's a very hot topic. Everybody wants to work with either a photograph or artwork that they drew, or maybe a paper crafting design that they have, and they want to convert it to embroidery. This is any type of artwork graphic. That's how you're going to do it through this program, and I'm going to show you how to do it. There are two types of graphics before we begin, and I've titled this the first steps because I want you to understand different types of graphics first, and then as we go through our lessons, we'll be learning more and more about editing our graphics and the things that we can do with them. Now, we will be working with a photograph of mine as we go along. After today's video, I will post it to the Janome Artistic Digitizer Facebook page, so you can go there and get it. And it's going to be in the files called Annie's Flower. It's a personal photograph I took, and it's the one I thought we could work through editing and working in the program to learn the different tools as we go along and the options that you can use for it in the software. So there are two different types of graphics, and we could call them artwork. We can call them anything we want, but whatever. But there's rasters and there's vectors. Now, rasters are the ones that are pixelated. There are JPEGs, are bitmaps. There's other formats of them too. Those are the ones when you convert them, they look a little messy and they take a bit more editing to work with because they are made of those little pixelated parts. And I'm going to show you that a little bit of that in the software so you can see where that happens. And then the other type are the vectors. Now, vectors are mathematical. They are made of lines and curves, much like our editing software. When we use like a digitized outline shape tool, we have curves and we have lines that we're working with. So it's mathematical. So those convert very cleanly. And they are have file extensions SVG, AI, I think EPS is one of those as well. I could be wrong on that, but there's many of them. So there's a lot of different graphic files that the software will open for you. And that depending on what happens, if it's one of the vectors, it will convert automatically and go right to the work page. And then and you can just double click on it, it opens to the page. But we're going to go over some options so you can see how all of that works. So let me go ahead and I'm going to close this window and go to the software so you can see that, and that's where we'll start. And as I said, I will be supplying the photograph for us. It's going to look just like this one over here, and we're naming it Annie's Flower. It will be on the Janome Artistic Digitizer Facebook page. You'll need to go there, and if you're not a member, apply to be a member. I'll approve you, and then you can go to the Files tab and download that photograph. So I have a couple here already, and the one thing I want to do is I want to open one of these that say SVG. This one here is an SVG, and this one here is an SVG. And when I go to open it, if I double click on it, it goes right in here and it's converted. Very simply. Now, if I wanted to do any editing, I could click on the parts. I could come up here to auto and select auto, and then I could see my sequence window here. I'm going to turn on my properties and my colors. I just right-clicked up in this area here to turn those on. So now as I select different parts, I can come over here and I can choose what I want to do with this design. And one thing, if you notice, let me move this out of the way. I can use the outlines, or I can click on, I have to move a little window, on the fill. I can do some items right in here. So you have an option of working with your fills or your outlines, and you have lots and lots of items to change, to edit in here. But really, they come out fairly clean, so there's a lot less to do with them. So that would be opening an SVG, and I'm not going to save this. This little design did come from the Daily Art Hub. It's a kind of a paper crafting site that I like to go to. And let's see, let me open my November one. That's the flower we're going to work with. I'm going to go back to my welcome page, and I'm going to make these a little larger so that we can see them. I also have down here, this is a JPEG, this little mushroom. So when I double click on that, I get this window here with the options of what I can do with it. And right now I'm just going to show you, if I clicked auto digitize and said okay, I would make some option changes in here. I'm going to just leave it the way it is and say trace and see what happens. And there it is. I didn't make any assumptions. The software did everything for me. There it is. With this selected, I can go to my auto, and now I can see the parts of my design and select them and change colors or whatever. Now this one was a JPEG, but I picked it particularly because it came out so very clean. All right, not all your JPEGs will come out that clean. And then from here, you know, if I don't want that white background, I can delete it, and I could work on the rest of this, making this a pattern if I wanted. Maybe I want it to look like that. So I have options to work with it that way. And as we go through the graphic we're going to work with, I will go over the tools over here in our properties, and also using our digitize outline shape tools over here, so you get an idea of how to use those different tools with your work. This is pretty good. I might just stitch this out just like it is. They don't all come out this way. This is a very simple JPEG, so it came out fairly easy. I'm not going to save it. I am going to go back here though, and this one I've done before. This is my little ladybug, and then this is a picture of my son's dog. So let's go in here. I'm going to open this one for just a moment. And when I double click, it doesn't go right to the work page because it's a raster. It's a JPEG actually. And so I would have to decide what I want to do with it. Now I can, these little dots around there, if you don't see them, sometimes they're kind of in the middle. You can just drag them out. These you can crop your picture before you start. So I really don't need all these other things around Posy. That's just too much. I don't need all that background. And the one thing too, when you're working with photographs especially, and I'll talk about this again when we work with the flower, you can take your photographs into Microsoft Paint, or one of the, there's plenty of apps on your phone you can download that you can remove the background. So you just have your focus piece in there, the dog in this. If I don't want any of the background, you know, in Paint I would have to erase all those pieces. There's different apps out there that work different ways, and you can explore those through the app library in your phone and check out which ones. Some of them you can do some really cool modern colorizing, so you get very modern, interesting looking things if you don't want such a realistic look. But this is the image window, and when you open the image window, this is where you're going to choose what you're going to do with this option. And I'm going to just open it right away as a backdrop to show you that. And down here you'll see, since I changed the size, you can see the size down here and the DPI. And we're looking to keep our DPI under 300 if we can. They actually work a lot better, so you can change it here if you have to. So let's just open it as a backdrop so I can talk about the backdrop properties. So here it is on my workspace, and I'll just zoom in so we can see it close. It is a backdrop. I'm clicking on it, nothing's happening. I have to either use my digitize outline shape, one of these tools, and I could draw on here to create my Posy like this if I wanted to. It just depends. But I'm not going to draw on that today, but that's how you would start out with a backdrop. But the backdrop properties, let's discuss those first. Up under View, you're going to go to Backdrop, and here you have some options. When you're working with your embroidery, you can hide it, or you can leave it below your embroidery, or you can bring it above your embroidery. And we're going to use this feature with our flower, so I can show you how that works. I love to bring it above the embroidery. Sometimes it's easier to see where your design is that way. But the properties of your background, your backdrop, you open right here to this window here. Now, if I needed to rotate this, or I could use my little rotate here. If I wanted to resize it, I could use my resizer here now and bring it in. Sometimes, you know, if you make maybe I made it, you know, this, maybe it came in this small, but oh, I really want it to be more like this. So I could size it up and work with it in that respect. And here's the size right here. It scales up to 178%. So it's much, much bigger there. I can work on straightening it. And again, you have a couple options here of what you're going to do with it. Since it is just a backdrop, it's not really, it's going to just stay in the background at this point. So that's how you would work with a backdrop. So at this point, you know, as I said, I could use my drawing tools. Maybe there's some shapes here, and I could draw a shape in here and select it and rotate that, and change the colors and maybe add some things in there. Maybe for these books I would use squares, things like that. So we're going to cover that type of editing as we go along. But that's how you would work with a backdrop if you brought in a backdrop. So let me close that one. And I'm not going to save it. So the next one I'm going to open is our JPEG that we're going to work on as we go along in a bit. And I want to go over a few things with this particular one. So I'm going to double click on it. Again, it opens into the image window. And again, I can resize this down. I don't need all that background. And I can just bring it in like this. Because I can do something different with that background. If I want it to be all one color later, I could work with that. So here are my options, and we're actually going to start at the bottom where it says Open as Paint Stitch. These are the different options you have with your graphic. So I'm going to click here and then OK. And it'll open right to the page as a paint stitch. And let me move in really close. So paint stitch is a thread work. And this is really pretty, I think, as thread work. I'm going to select it over here. It stays all together as one. When you're working with paint stitch, there are ways to edit this more or chop it more using the knife feature. But I want to talk about the parameters over here. I could change the density of this. If I wanted to make this more dense, this direction here, let me go this way. There we go. It's got to take a second. There it goes. So now it's very dense. Let me move in. It's 216,000 stitches. So that's a lot of stitches right there. So I don't think I might not want to stitch that, but I might bring it down. Let me bring it back down here. Whoops. If I undo this, let's see what happens. Let's see if we can get it back to the normal. There we go. So you can always bring it up just a little bit. You can change the length of those stitches. I can change the amount of colors. Maybe I want it to have 25 colors and see what happens. It's going to have, sometimes it loses some of its definition when you have too many colors. If I bring it down to 10 and I'm typing in the number and then hitting return, so now it's 10 colors. And I had kept it, the default is 15. So there we go. Down here we have our smoothing and our blending. So if you're going to blend, you can do high blending, and sometimes this makes the background look great, so you'll be able to have this mishmash of colors. Sometimes you lose definition. So I'm going to put that back on none. And the same thing with smoothing. You have standard or high, and that changes the stitches a bit to smooth out your item. It may move things apart and so forth. Now you have your brightness and your contrast. Now if I changed my contrast and went up, see now you can see it's really becoming more bold on that part. If I add brightness to it, it may wash out. And that's what I like. I like to play around with the different parts of it. For paint stitch is one of my favorites. I like to play around with the different parts of it so that I can see what happens. And then when I'm happy with it, I will save it first as a draw file. And so I would go to my file and then save as. And I would save it right here as a draw file. Okay, and cancel that. If I wanted to save it as a GIF, I'd do the same thing. Go back to the save as, because it's going to save in my computer, and just change it here to the file format that I want to save it in. Okay. If I was ready to stitch this, whoops, if I was ready to stitch this, I would just go up here to my CM17, send it wirelessly, or export it to a USB. And when I can export this way, or I can go to File and export this way, and I get the same drop image, and I could go to my USB storage. All right. So that's how I find my USB. It's much easier. We're not going to Dropbox. It's much easier that way than if you went to File, Save As, and then in here you have to find, now I know this is my USB stick, but you'd have to find your USB stick and then save it. If you're using these drop downs, it does it for you. So now that I have it as a paint stitch, one thing you notice is right over here in our properties, I don't have to reopen it to see what the other options look like. Here is Photo Stitch. So we're going to click on Photo Stitch, and it's going to convert to Photo Stitch. Now Photo Stitch converts it to these 4 colors here. You could change those if you want to see what it does on that part of it. And some pictures look really nice. If I wanted to, I could edit the color, and maybe I want to make that more like that. There we go. And this one here, let's edit that color. Maybe I want to make that more in the greens in here. Slide this down to a darker green. Somewhere in there is that darker green. And then I could adjust my colors that way. But I'm going to undo this back to kind of where we started. In Photo Stitch, what I really love is to use the monochrome. In here, again, you can change your density before you go to monochrome. You can make it less dense or very dense and see how it fills in a little bit more. When you look at Photo Stitch, it is a line stitch. It's a little zigzag that builds up and builds up to make that part of your design. And I'm going to go back here, a couple of undos here. Let's see here. There we go. And back to Photo Stitch. There we go. And in monochrome, this is my favorite. I like to go to, see, it's a beautiful black and white. And you get some, let me take that border off. You get some beautiful works of art this way when you do it that way. And here you can change the density a little bit too. The other way, I always go the wrong way. There we go. And make it sharper as you change that density. There we go. It makes those zigzag stitches, let me see, it's going, there it goes. It makes those zigzag stitches closer together to give you that option. And I've done things where I've done this and then I've layered part of my photo stitch, my paint stitch on top of this, and it really gives some very interesting art. But it makes some beautiful work. So from there, if you wanted to see what, let me take the monochromatic off. If you want to see what the cross stitch looks like, you could go here to cross stitch, and it turns it to a cross stitch. And let me go in the back and see if my, okay, you can't see my backdrop, so that's fine. So when you do a cross stitch, sometimes it looks very washed out on here. And maybe if you had it on a different color, it would show up a different color. If I changed my fabric color to something dark like this, and okay. Yeah, so then it doesn't, you lose a little bit of it as well. But you can see the crosses a little bit better here with the darker color behind it. And I definitely might change a little bit of the density on this. The thing with this, you can't individually change your crosses at this point. It's kind of grouped together. But you can play with the amount of colors that you have and make changes in that respect with it. So these are just some things that I want you to explore: photo stitch and paint stitch and cross stitch, just to give your graphics a look. Sometimes you could use a cross stitch and layer something else on top of it. You can get some very interesting art by doing that. It doesn't have to be that look of, just your typical looking embroidery. You can think outside the box and do what I call multimedia, joining different things together. And then if you wanted to change it to artwork, you have the opportunity to put it back as a backdrop. And then, of course, use your tools over here to draw and create your shapes this way, which we will be doing some of that when we start working with our piece. So that's how you would work with a backdrop. All right, let me close that. So let's open this, and we're going to do a auto digitize trace to outlines, and I am going to make it a bit smaller because I don't need all that extra. I really love this flower. I found this on a walk when I was out in Portland. One of the neighbors had a beautiful garden out front, and this was one of her flowers. And one morning, it was just, when I went out, it was just looking at me. So I picked a picture of it right away. All right, so here we go. It's a little over on the DPI. Let's see what happens when we get over here. And it's going to take a moment to come in here. There we go. Now that it's here, I'm going to make some changes over in these tools right here. I could just trace it and let the software do everything, but I'm going to make a few changes. If I needed to scale this, right now it's 7 by 7. So if I wanted it much bigger, I could make it, I could click on scale and then use the arrows and bring it up, 50 to another 100%. Or I could make it smaller if I wanted to make it smaller. So you could change the scale of your image before you even convert it. On the accuracy, the thing with accuracy is it auto defaults, I think, to 5, and it goes up to an accuracy of 8 and down to an accuracy of 1. So with an 8, it happens to deal with the pixels that are on here. So I'm going to click on this little item right here, and see how many. Let's actually zoom in here, so if I can get my zoom to, not this, there it goes. All right, so see all these are all the little editing nodes that are going to be in there. There's a lot of them when I'm up at 8. Now, if I brought it down to 5, I typically stay at 5. Let's take a moment because it'll go down and it'll make a change. Sometimes it takes a second or two to make that change. There'll be less of them. And if you bring it down to the bottom to 1, let's give it a moment. I'm going to turn it on and turn it off. Just give it a second to catch up. There'll be less of these for you to work with, and it's hard to tell that there are less of these at this point. Let me see if I go way in here and we go up. So you can see these are the points that are around those shapes. So sometimes having a lot of points, let's move it up and see if we can see those points. I'll turn them off and turn them back on. There's a few more points. You can see some of these areas have closed. I can bring it up again. We'll bring it all the way up to 8. Let me close it and open it. There's a few more points in there. So it just depends. To me, sometimes those are too many points. It gives me so many little shapes and things, I don't like them. So I typically stay around 5. Now, if it was a black and white item, when you open a black and white item and you look at the editing nodes here, you can see if it's following the shape of your design or not. Less nodes will not follow the shape. More nodes will follow the shape. So you can actually see it a little bit more visually with a black and white one. Now my color limit, I'm going to limit this to 15 colors or maybe 20. And that might be a lot of color changes. 20 colors might be a lot. Maybe I don't have a lot of shades. Maybe I'm going to go with 15. And I'm not going to delete my background because there's a lot of colors in my background. There's a lot of I can't find one color that I really want to delete, so I'm just going to leave it. Sorry about moving in and out like that. So I'm going to leave all that. This is okay there, and then I'm going to hit trace. And it's going to take a minute here. Maybe not a minute, but it'll take a bit to do its converting. There it goes. Okay, and I'm going to zoom in so we can see this. There we are. Look at that. So now it converted. And, from back here, it doesn't look so bad. But when you get in close, you can see all the different parts in here. There's some parts like this is a satin stitch. This is a step stitch. There's a lot of little tiny stitches in here, like some things like that in there. I don't think there's any open areas. So one of the things I like to do when I first start is I'll look at my whole piece, and I actually like to work with everything as a step fill. So I'll select it all, and you can see there's 474 color changes. That's going to change, and right now we have 148,000 stitches. This is a kind of a pretty big piece. So I have it all selected, and I'm going to click on just step, and there we go. And now it's just going to be all a step fill, and I could work from there with the parts of it that I want to work with. So I can start coming in here and selecting parts. I can go into my properties here and change the density of some parts, change the length, and so forth on that part of it. So that's how that would work. So let's pick a piece like up here, and I like that color, but maybe actually let's go on these pieces. I want these to be a little less dense. Let's see what happens when it's a little less dense. That's too less dense. Let's go back a little bit here. Let me make it, there we go. A little bit more like that. And I'm trying to see if I can get it to see what's underneath this. Now, more than likely, let's go to auto here so we can open that up. Our sequence here is, we remove overlaps, is on auto. If I said never, anything that's behind this, and I can move this, will fill in when I move it. So there's some other colors under here. Well, it's filling in. Oops, let me put it back where it was. Oh, there we go. One more. Let's go back. Let me go back one more time. Oh, come on. It doesn't want to go back for me today. There we go. All right. So somewhere I moved that piece. There it is. Okay, now it's back. I'd have to change the one that's behind it here, the yellow one, and make sure it was covered down here. So for me, this is a lot of work right here. And I would the first thing I like to do, if we're talking about first steps, the very first thing, instead of going in here and playing with density and color and all of that, I will go through and delete the little parts. Things that are little and tiny. Like I don't need some of these little things in here. And I will just come in here and delete these little things like this. To me, these are nothing. I'm selecting using the delete key on my keyboard, and I'm deleting them. Just like that. Because I don't need them. I could select it and right click and come over here actually and click on this, right click on this color and select by color. And it will show me everything that color, and I could delete it. If I wanted the background to be deleted, I could delete all of that in one swoop. Okay, so that's my very first step. And then remember I talked about under view and backdrop to put it above your embroidery. So now my graphic, you can kind of see, it's kind of hard in this one. My graphic is on top of my stitching. So I can kind of see the graphic a little bit better and see what my stitching is doing. And here I can see where it's open areas in there. So this will be more evident as we go along. So let me take that off because I want to go back to the normal where it's below my embroidery. There we go. So yes, that would be my first step, is to go through and take any of those small things away. And then I start with the things in the back. Not quite my background, because I'm going to do something different with that, I think, at some point. I do like this little mix of color in here. I may see if I can undo that green one more time and bring back that green. Let's see if it does it. I think I'm beyond it. I don't know. Because I like that sort of, I don't know, like watercolor look on the background. So I may do a little, maybe make this a little bit less sharp and a little more watercolor. But I start with the things in the back. And so that would be the yellow of these petals. And I would go through each one and work through it and figure out, like, that's the very bottom, and then what color would come on it next. And I would work through these, changing maybe their density, maybe the type of stitch that they are, giving it a pattern, using my stitch flow and so forth. Okay, and we're going to get to that in our next lesson. Before we go there, I do want to show you one other thing. This is one, and I'll open this up. Well, this one here. This is one I did in Paint, and I removed all the background, and I'm gonna do OK. I'm gonna click my accuracy. I think I'm gonna change my colors maybe to 15, and I am gonna click on background. And once it comes in here, I'll show you how to take that background away. As long as this white color is not in my flower, I can click on background and then slide my cursor on here and click the eyedropper, and it's going to remove that part. And then I'm going to do trace. There we go. So now, there it is without any background. So that gives you an idea of how you can work with it. Now, I had to use the eraser and do it, so some of these aren't quite as nice as I'd like them to be, but when I start editing, I will change all of that. Like if I went to my edit nodes, see how many nodes are in there? We would be playing with all those nodes. I could be working with these to make the outer edge of this look a bit nicer. And we will be doing more of that as we go. I just want to touch upon some areas as we go through today. So let me go ahead, I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to close this one. And I'm going to close this one because I know I'm coming back. And let me see if this one here, I want to show you this one because this is one of the ways we're going to work next week. Hopefully it'll reload for me. Okay, here we go. So what I've done here, and I'm going to zoom in close, on the right side is the converted portion. On the left side is the backdrop. Okay? And that way I can work with both sides, and I can show you how I edit this side, how I would draw all this in, and then how I would do it on this side if I had converted it to stitches. So you can kind of see all on one page without having me flipping from page to page the option. And how I did that, let's see if I can. What I did is I opened the full one, and then I just dragged it back halfway and left it halfway. So let me show you that. I'm going to close this one up. I'm going to go back to this one. I'm going to open it with the whole piece on there, and we'll do OK. Accuracy, color limit, let's just make that 15. We're going to wait for it to come up all the way through, and then we'll hit trace. And I'll show you how I did this. So you could play along the same way when you go get the flower. All right, let's do trace. You can also actually cut it in half before you bring it in. So I would select all of it over here, and then I could, yeah, that's going to disturb it. That's not actually how I did it. Let me just go back. I'm sorry. Let's delete this one. I think I need an update on my PC. I think that, or my Mac. I think this is why I'm having a little bit of trouble on this part of it. And see if I can get it to, don't save it. I'm not saving. All right, let me open this one again. It's here you want to open it halfway, like this. All right, and auto digitize it and go here. And then go to accuracy of 5, color limit, whatever you like. I'm doing 15. And then trace. So now I have the exact size of that. And then I opened a backdrop. I opened it as a background on a separate page. So I'm going to go back here and open it again, but I'm going to do it as a backdrop. And I went back to my half. I selected it and I copied it and I went over here and I pasted it. There it is. And then I moved it into place right here. I'll give it a second to get in place. And that's how you can work with this, with having it embroidered on one side and a backdrop on the other. So you can do a little bit of both all at once. Sometimes that is how I work. I sometimes do a little bit on both sides. So I'm going to put the camera back on and wrap this up for today. Let's see, here we go. All right, so now that's a lot of information on graphics. So you may have to go back through and listen to this again and go through the different steps and try photo stitch, try paint stitch, try cross stitch, just to get a feel for what they look like. And then if you're going to bring in, you can go get my picture. It'll be up. It'll be on the AD page in a couple of days. And it'll say Annie's flower. That's where I'm going to put it, under files. And you could open it and save it just like I have it there, with the open a backdrop and then open it again and use those blue dots to make it halfway, and then save it, or try one of your own that way too, so you can get a feel for what that's going to look like. And then we will be working that way on our graphic when we come back in our next lesson. We'll start with some basics and we'll work through a few things. If you have questions, have them ready for next time, or post them down below so I can answer those, or be ready for those on the next one. So if you have things you want to ask me, post them below for what's coming, and then I can help you with that. All right, everyone. So take your time. Watch the video again. I'm going to try to keep these. This is about 35 minutes. I'm trying to keep them short so we can go back and look at them without being really, really long. Okay, which means I might have to do more videos than I really expected. So thank you, everybody, for joining me. Hope to see you again next week as we start working through our graphics. And don't forget, you can go over to the Janome Artistic Digitizer Facebook page and get your flower graphic over there. Thanks for joining me. Bye for now.